boy was not like the others in his school. While most of the students ran around in the playground, shouted in the corridors, or competed in sports, he preferred quiet corners, books, and his music. Music had always been his escape, a place where he could breathe and feel free, away from the chatter of the world. He didn't seek attention, and he never demanded it, but his mind often wandered to melodies that no one else seemed to notice. He was small for his age, and his shy nature made him an easy target for teasing. Some students would laugh when he walked past them, making jokes about his quiet ways. They didn't know that the boy had a secret, a talent hidden behind those shy eyes. At home, when no one was watching, his fingers would glide over the piano keys with a skill that amazed even his own family. He could play music that made people stop and listen, music that made the heart ache with beauty. But at school, the piano was far away, locked in a room he rarely visited. The principal of the school was a man of great reputation. He had strict rules and high expectations, and students often feared him more than they respected him. Teachers spoke of his sharp eye, capable of spotting both talent and failure in a single glance. The principal had been in the position for years, and the school had thrived under his leadership, but he had a habit of testing students in unusual ways, sometimes even making them uncomfortable to see how they reacted under pressure. Some students admired him, but many avoided attracting his attention. The boy, however, had somehow flown under the radar, mostly because he kept to himself and rarely drew notice. One day, the school announced a small talent showcase. It wasn't mandatory, but students were encouraged to participate. The announcement went up on the bulletin board, and excitement spread through the corridors like wildfire. Everyone began talking about who would perform and what they would show. Some were confident in their abilities. Others were eager to impress the teachers. The boy barely noticed the announcement at first. He didn't think much of showing his music to others. For him, the joy was in playing itself, not in recognition or applause. Despite his usual calm, his mother encouraged him to take part. She knew how much he loved the piano and how talented he was. She reminded him gently that sometimes sharing your talent could open doors, even if it felt scary at first. The boy hesitated. The thought of playing in front of others made his stomach twist, but deep down he wanted to try. So he signed up quietly, hoping no one would make fun of him. As the day of the showcase approached, whispers started circulating. Some students had noticed the boy signing up, and curiosity mixed with skepticism. They knew him as quiet and unassuming, hardly someone who would stand out on stage. Some laughed softly, sharing jokes about how he might struggle to even find the right notes. Their laughter wasn't cruel at first, just the nervous amusement of students waiting for a surprise. The principal, however, was aware of every student who signed up. When he saw the boy's name on the list, a small smile appeared on his face. Not a kind one, but a challenging one. He was used to students showing off or trying to impress, but this boy had always been so reserved. The principal decided, in his own mind, to see if this quiet student could handle the pressure. Perhaps it would be a lesson for him, a moment to reveal the boy's limits. He planned to watch closely, expecting that the boy might stumble and falter, giving the principal something to comment on publicly. On the day of the showcase, the school auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and staff. The excitement in the air was palpable. Some students were nervous. Some were proud. Others were just eager to see what would happen. The boy sat quietly in the back, clutching his sheet music. His heart raced, and his fingers tapped unconsciously on the edge of his seat. He tried to remind himself that he had played countless times at home and that the music was already in him. But the presence of the principal, watching closely from the front row, made his hands shake slightly. One by one, students went on stage. Some sang, some recited poems, and some played instruments. Each performance drew cheers and applause, and the boy's anxiety grew. When his turn came, whispers spread among the audience. Many were curious, wondering what the quiet boy could do. The principal leaned back, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but his eyes focused sharply. The boy felt the weight of every gaze, the expectation, and the doubt. He walked to the piano, each step feeling heavier than the last. He sat down on the bench, took a deep breath, and opened the sheet music. The room fell quiet, anticipation hanging thick in the air. He placed his fingers on the keys, hesitated for a moment, and then began to play. The first notes were soft, almost timid, but precise. The sound filled the auditorium, and the whispers began to fade. The music carried a feeling of something deeper, something the audience wasn't expecting from such a quiet student. As the boy continued, the principal's expression began to change. His eyebrows rose slightly, and his lips pressed together, a sign that he was paying closer attention than he had intended. The music was flawless, moving through the room with elegance and power. Students stopped fidgeting, leaning forward in their seats, unable to take their eyes off the piano. Even teachers exchanged glances, surprised at the skill and emotion pouring from the boy's performance. The boy's nervousness slowly melted away as he lost himself in the music. He didn't think about the whispers or the principal's sharp gaze anymore. Each note flowed naturally, each chord striking with clarity. It was as if the piano was an extension of his own voice, speaking the words he could never say out loud. The auditorium, once filled with doubt and curiosity, now held only silence, filled with the power of his music. When the last note lingered and faded, the room remained quiet for a heartbeat, as if no one knew what to do. Then, applause began softly and grew louder, spreading from the front to the back of the room. Some students clapped with wide eyes, others whispered in awe. The principal sat back, his stern demeanor softening, though he tried to hide it. He had expected to see a mistake, a stumble or hesitation, but instead, he saw a talent that surpassed his expectations. The boy stood up, heart still racing, and looked around at the faces before him. For the first time in a long while, he felt proud, not just because of the applause, but because he had faced his fear and let his music speak. The principal gave a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement of his skill. It was not praise with words, but the recognition was clear. As he walked off the stage, the boy felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. Students approached him, some with questions about how long he had been playing, others with congratulations. For once, he was not invisible. He was seen for who he truly was. The experience, though nerve-wracking, had given him confidence and a glimpse of what could happen when he trusted himself. That day marked a turning point. The boy realized that talent, when combined with courage, could surprise even the most skeptical observers. And the principal, strict and discerning as he was, had learned that assumptions based on appearances could often be wrong. The quiet boy, once underestimated and overlooked, had shown that true skill could shine in the most unexpected moments. The day after the showcase, the boy was still thinking about what had happened. He could not stop replaying the sound of the piano in his mind, the way the notes had flown from his fingers and filled the room. He remembered the stunned faces of his classmates and the principal's sudden change in expression. It was all so new, so strange. People looked at him differently now, with curiosity and some with admiration. Some students whispered quietly to each other, trying to figure out how someone so quiet could play so beautifully. At school, things were not the same. The hallways felt different, the classrooms quieter in a strange way. The boy walked to his classes feeling the weight of attention, though he did his best to stay calm. A few students smiled at him, while others simply stared, unable to understand the boy they had always ignored. It was a mixture of admiration and disbelief, and the boy was not used to being the center of attention. The principal, known for his sharp judgment, had called a small meeting with some teachers in his office. He wanted to talk about the boy, the talent he had shown, and how such a student could be encouraged properly. Though his voice was calm, his mind was racing. He had always believed that people revealed themselves clearly through their actions, but the boy had surprised him completely. He had planned, in a way, to test and perhaps embarrass the student, but instead, the boy had revealed a depth and skill that even the principal could not ignore. Later that morning, the principal asked the boy to come to the office. The boy's stomach twisted, unsure what to expect. Was he in trouble? Or was this something else entirely? He walked slowly, trying to keep his hands from trembling. When he entered the office, The principal was sitting behind his large desk, papers neatly stacked to the side, and his gaze fixed on the boy. "Sit down," the principal said simply. His voice was firm, but there was no anger in it, only curiosity. The boy hesitated for a moment before sitting in the chair opposite the principal. He could feel his heart beating rapidly, unsure what was coming next. "I watched your performance yesterday," the principal began. "I have to admit, I did not expect what I saw. You have a talent that is rare, and you need to understand the power it gives you." The boy blinked, unsure whether to speak. Compliments were not something he was used to receiving, and the principal's words felt almost unreal. "You have a gift," the principal continued, leaning slightly forward. "But talent without confidence is wasted. You need to learn how to face challenges, how to take what you can do in private and make it known to the world in a way that matters." The boy nodded slowly. He wanted to agree, but his voice felt small. I just play," he said softly. "I never thought about making it public." The principal's expression softened for a moment. "And that is part of why I wanted to speak with you. Not to test you in the way some teachers might, but to show you that there is more to your gift than just playing alone. You need to see what you are capable of when people are watching, when there is pressure, when you are challenged." The boy's mind swirled with thoughts. He had always played for himself, for the music, for the feeling of being lost in sound. He had never considered the idea of performing, of standing in front of an audience beyond his small family. The thought frightened him and excited him at the same time. The principal continued, "I want you to prepare for a performance in front of the whole school, in a month. I want to see you rise to the challenge, and I will personally support you. But you need to practice harder than ever. Show everyone, including yourself, what you are truly capable of." The boy swallowed hard. The idea of performing again in front of everyone was terrifying, but something inside him sparked. He wanted to prove himself not to anyone else, but to show that his music was real, that it mattered. He nodded quietly, accepting the challenge. After leaving the principal's office, the boy felt a mixture of fear and determination. He returned to his usual quiet routines but started spending more time at the piano. Each day, he pushed himself further, practicing more complicated pieces, perfecting the emotions in his music, and learning to express feelings that words could not capture. His fingers ached, his hands were sore, but the joy of progress kept him going. Music had become a new kind of comfort, one that was no longer just private but also a bridge to something bigger. Meanwhile, news about the boy's talent spread through the school. Students who had mocked him or ignored him now watched him in a new light. Some were jealous, some were impressed, and some just curious. They tried to imagine what it would be like to perform in front of the principal and the entire school. The boy, for his part, remained quiet, focusing on the piano rather than the gossip. He knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but the thought of sharing his music kept him moving forward. The principal, on his side, observed quietly. He made sure to check in with teachers, asking them to support the boy in preparing for the big performance. He wanted to see how far the boy could go, not to embarrass him again, but to witness growth and confidence emerging from someone who had been overlooked for so long. As the weeks passed, the boy's confidence grew. He became more comfortable in the presence of others, learning to trust his skill even when eyes were on him. He practiced every day, often staying late in the music room, making sure every note was perfect. He experimented with new pieces that were challenging and full of emotion. His talent became a secret power he carried proudly, even if he didn't always speak about it. Then came the day when the principal decided to have a small test before the big performance. He called the boy into the auditorium and asked him to play a piece without any preparation, just from memory. The boy felt his stomach tighten, but he agreed. He sat at the piano, took a deep breath and began to play. The principal and a few teachers watched closely. The music flowed effortlessly, each note precise and expressive. By the end, the principal's eyes held a small spark of pride, and the boy felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had ever known. Word spread quickly after this informal test. Students whispered among themselves, some in awe, others in disbelief. The boy's reputation grew, but he stayed humble, keeping his focus on the music rather than the attention. He learned that talent was not just about skill. It was about courage, persistence, and the willingness to face challenges. By the time the month of the official performance arrived, the boy had changed in ways he did not expect. He was more confident, not loud or brash, but quietly sure of himself. He had learned that talent could be noticed, that even someone who was once invisible could stand in the light and be seen. And though he still felt nervous at times, he knew that the music was inside him, ready to shine when the moment came. The day of the big performance arrived, and the school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students filled the seats, teachers stood along the walls, and parents who were allowed in peeked curiously from the back. The boy felt a mix of fear and anticipation as he waited backstage. Every muscle in his body was tense, but he reminded himself of the weeks of preparation, the hours of practice, and the growth he had achieved. He had faced challenges before, but this was different. This was not just about playing music. It was about standing up for himself and showing the world what he could do. Backstage, the boy glanced around. Other students were nervous too. Some were practicing quietly, while others tried to calm themselves with deep breaths or by pacing. There was an energy in the room, a mix of anxiety and excitement that made his own heart race even faster. Despite everything, he felt a strange calm, a quiet confidence born from knowing he had worked hard and was ready. The principal was seated at the front of the auditorium, his eyes sharp and observant. He had seen many students perform over the years, but he was particularly curious about the boy's performance. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the pressure overwhelm him? The principal leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, waiting to witness the moment that would test both skill and courage. The announcer called the boy's name. A hush fell over the audience. Whispers of curiosity spread like wildfire. The boy took a deep breath, stepped onto the stage, and walked to the piano. The bright stage lights made him squint for a moment, and he could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on him. For a split second, he wondered if he had made a mistake by agreeing to this, but he pushed the thought aside. He had come this far, and backing down was not an option. He sat at the piano bench, adjusted the sheet music, and placed his fingers on the keys. The audience waited in silence. The boy closed his eyes briefly, letting the familiar sensation of the piano guide him. He remembered the countless hours of practice, the mistakes he had made, the notes he had perfected. This was his moment, and he would not let fear control him. The first notes rang out, soft and delicate, filling the auditorium with a warmth that seemed to envelop everyone. The music was precise, every note carefully placed, yet flowing naturally like a river. The boy's fingers moved with grace and confidence, and the room seemed to pause to listen. Even the principal's expression softened as he leaned forward slightly, captivated by the unexpected depth of the performance. As the boy continued to play, the music grew richer and more complex. He had chosen a challenging piece, one that required not just skill but emotion and timing. His hands moved over the keys with a mixture of strength and delicacy, bringing the music to life. The audience was spellbound. Students who had once whispered doubts now sat in awe, unable to look away. Teachers exchanged glances, impressed by the boy's technical ability and the feeling he poured into every note. Midway through the performance, the boy closed his eyes completely. He was no longer aware of the audience, the principal, or even the stage lights. There was only the music, flowing through him and into the room. He felt every chord, every pause, every subtle change in tone. The piano became an extension of himself, and the melody carried his emotions, his struggles, and his triumphs. It was a performance that transcended skill. It was a story told through music. The principal, who had initially planned to test the boy, now sat in stunned silence. He had underestimated him, and the realization was both humbling and impressive. The boy was not just talented. He had the courage to face the pressure and the ability to communicate through his music in a way that moved people. The principal's stern expression softened into one of respect. He had seen many students perform over the years, but this was something rare, something that stayed with you long after the notes faded. The audience was completely captivated. Parents leaned forward, teachers held their breath, and students watched in amazement. The whispers of doubt and ridicule that had filled the school weeks earlier were gone, replaced by quiet admiration. Some students even felt a twinge of envy, realizing that talent and courage could appear in the most unexpected places. The boy's music was no longer just his own. It belonged to everyone who listened, touching hearts and leaving a lasting impression. As the final notes lingered and faded, a moment of silence hung in the air. No one moved, no one clapped, as if the room itself was in awe of what had just occurred. Then, slowly, the applause began. First, a few tentative claps, then more, until the entire auditorium was filled with the sound of hands striking together in appreciation. The boy stood, slightly trembling, but proud. He had faced the challenge and emerged victorious. The principal stood as well, his eyes meeting the boy's. There was a nod, a silent acknowledgement of talent and courage. The boy felt a warmth in his chest, a recognition that went beyond words. He had not only impressed the audience, he had earned the respect of someone who had been skeptical and demanding. It was a moment that would stay with him forever. After the performance, students approached him with smiles and questions. Some asked how long he had been playing, others wanted tips on technique, and a few simply wanted to say how much they had enjoyed the music. The boy answered politely, feeling shy but happy. For once, he was the center of attention, not because of arrogance or showing off, but because of his talent and dedication. Teachers spoke with him as well, praising his hard work and commitment. They encouraged him to continue, to explore new pieces and expand his skills. The boy listened quietly, grateful for their support, but also aware that the journey was far from over. This performance was just a step, a glimpse of what could be possible if he continued to work and believe in himself. As the day ended and the auditorium emptied, the boy stayed behind for a few moments, sitting at the piano once more. He ran his fingers over the keys, feeling the music lingering in his mind. He thought about the weeks of practice, the fear he had faced, and the courage it had taken to play in front of everyone. A sense of accomplishment and pride filled him, stronger than anything he had felt before. The principal watched from a distance, satisfied. He had intended to test the boy, perhaps even embarrass him, but instead, he had witnessed something extraordinary. The boy's performance had taught him a lesson as well. Never underestimate quiet determination, and never judge talent by appearances. The boy had proven that courage and skill could shine brightest when least expected. That night, the boy walked home slowly, the cool breeze brushing his face. He felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of doubt had been lifted. He had faced a challenge that had terrified him, and he had succeeded. Music was no longer just a private comfort. It was a bridge to the world, a way to communicate and connect. The applause and recognition were wonderful, but the true reward was knowing that he had faced his fear and let his music speak. He knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more performances, and more moments of doubt. But he also knew that he was ready. He had learned the power of preparation, the strength of courage, and the beauty of trusting oneself. The boy had begun a journey that would shape him for years to come, and this performance was the first step into a future filled with possibility and hope. It was a day that would remain etched in his memory forever, a moment when talent, courage, and determination came together to create something unforgettable. The day after the performance, the school was filled with a new kind of energy. Students talked about the boy and his piano skills wherever they went. Some whispered in awe, recalling the way the music had flowed so naturally. Others admitted quietly that they had been wrong to underestimate him. The boy himself walked through the halls with a calm confidence, though he still felt a little shy. He didn't boast or show off. He simply carried himself differently, aware that he had faced a fear and succeeded. Even the teachers could not stop talking about the performance. Many of them had been surprised, not just by the technical skill but by the emotional depth the boy had brought to the music. They discussed among themselves how important it was to nurture such talent, and how sometimes the quietest students could hold the most remarkable abilities. It was a lesson in humility for everyone, and the boy's presence in the school now felt more significant. The principal, too, was affected by what had happened. He had spent years observing students, judging them by behavior, appearances, and confidence. But this boy had taught him a valuable lesson. Talent could be hidden, and courage could come from unexpected places. He thought back to the day he had planned to test the boy, perhaps even mock him, and felt a mixture of surprise and admiration. The boy had turned what could have been an embarrassing situation into a display of brilliance, and it had left everyone, including the principal, in awe. Later that week, the principal called the boy to his office once again. The boy's heart beat faster as he entered, wondering what the principal wanted this time. He had already performed, and he could not imagine that there was anything more to discuss. Yet the principal's face held a thoughtful expression, and the boy sensed that something important was coming. "I wanted to speak with you again," the principal began, his voice calm but carrying a weight of seriousness. "What you did on stage was remarkable. You did not just play music, you told a story. You showed courage, patience, and a deep understanding of what your talent can become. I want to help you take this further." The boy listened carefully, trying to absorb every word. He had not expected the principal to be so sincere. He had prepared himself for criticism or advice on discipline, not encouragement. His hands rested on his lap, fingers fidgeting slightly, as he tried to remain composed. "You have something rare," the principal continued. "Many students play instruments, but few can touch people's hearts the way you did. I want to see you grow, to challenge yourself further, and to embrace opportunities that may come. Music is not just about practice. It is about courage, expression, and sharing a piece of yourself. You have shown all of that." The boy felt a warmth in his chest. These words were different from anything he had heard before. They were not empty praise or a passing compliment. They were recognition, acknowledgement of the effort, courage, and heart that he had put into his music. He nodded quietly, a small smile forming, unsure how to express his gratitude in words. The principal leaned back in his chair, studying the boy. "I want you to think about competitions, recitals, and other opportunities where you can perform. I will guide you and the school will support you. But more importantly, I want you to believe in yourself. Talent is one thing, but confidence is what makes it shine." The boy left the office feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had never imagined that his talent could lead to such recognition and guidance. The idea of competitions and recitals filled him with both anticipation and fear, but he knew he was ready to take the next step. The principal's faith in him gave him courage he had never known before. Over the next few weeks, the boy's routine changed. He spent more time at the piano, experimenting with different pieces, exploring styles he had never attempted before, and perfecting the ones he already knew. He learned to manage his nerves, to focus his mind, and to express not just notes but emotions. Every practice session became a journey of discovery, teaching him discipline, patience, and resilience. Word of his talent spread beyond the school. Parents, local musicians, and even some community members came to hear him play. Each time he performed, he grew more comfortable, more confident, and more expressive. The shy boy who once hid in corners had become someone whose music commanded attention and respect. His performances were no longer just about impressing others. They became a way to communicate, to connect, and to inspire. The principal continued to support him, attending some of his practice sessions and offering guidance. He encouraged the boy to challenge himself with more difficult pieces, to perform in front of larger audiences, and to embrace the opportunities that came his way. The boy learned to trust the principal's advice, realizing that his strict nature was not meant to intimidate but to push him to reach his full potential. One afternoon, during a practice session in the auditorium, the principal asked the boy to play a particularly challenging piece. The boy hesitated at first, unsure if he could handle it, but the principal's encouraging nod gave him confidence. As he began to play, his fingers moved over the keys with precision and emotion. The music filled the empty auditorium, and the principal listened quietly, a small smile forming. By the time the last note faded, Both of them knew that the boy had grown in ways that went beyond technique. He had grown in courage, confidence, and self-belief. Students who had once doubted him now approached him with respect. They asked questions, sought advice, and even practiced alongside him, inspired by his dedication. The boy remained humble, focusing on his music rather than the attention. He understood that true talent was not about being noticed but about the journey of growth and expression. As the school year progressed, the boy continued to excel. Each performance, whether in school assemblies, local competitions, or community events, brought new lessons, new challenges, and new confidence. He learned to face nerves, to embrace mistakes as part of learning, and to trust in his preparation. The boy who had once been shy and overlooked had transformed into a confident young musician, respected and admired by peers, teachers, and the community alike. Through it all, the principal remained a guiding presence. He had started with a plan to test the boy, perhaps even mock him, but he had ended up witnessing a transformation that was remarkable and inspiring. The principal had learned alongside the boy, understanding that talent could be hidden in unexpected places, and that courage and perseverance could reveal the extraordinary in the most ordinary individuals. The boy's journey was far from over. He knew that challenges would continue, that there would always be moments of fear and doubt. But he also knew that he had the skill, the courage, and the guidance to face them. Each note he played was a reminder of the growth he had achieved, the challenges he had overcome, and the promise of what lay ahead. By the end of the school year, the boy had become a symbol of quiet determination and exceptional talent. Students and teachers alike looked up to him, inspired not just by his music but by the journey he had undertaken. The principal, once skeptical and strict, now held deep respect and admiration for the boy, recognizing the power of patience, encouragement, and belief in hidden potential. In those weeks, the boy had learned lessons that would last a lifetime. He had learned that talent needed courage to shine, that determination could overcome fear, and that guidance and support could unlock abilities that even the individual might not fully recognize. His music was no longer just a private comfort. It had become a voice, a bridge to others, and a testament to the extraordinary power of perseverance, courage, and heart. The boy had grown so much since that first showcase, and yet, he still carried the same quiet humility. He no longer felt invisible in the school, but he had not let the recognition make him boastful or distant. He understood that the applause, the praise, and even the attention were only part of a larger journey, a path that required constant effort, practice, and courage. Music had become more than a private joy. It was now a responsibility, a gift to be shared and nurtured. One morning, the principal asked the boy to meet him in his office. The boy felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but he had learned to face such moments with quiet confidence. He walked in and found the principal seated behind his desk, a rare smile on his face. The principal motioned for the boy to sit. "I want to talk about something important," the principal began. "You have done remarkably well, and you have grown beyond what I ever expected. But I want you to think about how far you can go, and how you can inspire others with your talent." The boy listened intently. He had never imagined that his music could inspire others outside his family or the small school community. He had focused on improving for himself, for the joy of playing, but now he realized there was potential to make a bigger impact. The principal continued, "There are opportunities beyond this school. Competitions, concerts, even scholarships. I want you to consider them not for recognition, but for the chance to grow, to challenge yourself, and to show what dedication and courage can achieve." The boy nodded, feeling both excitement and fear. The thought of performing in unfamiliar places, in front of strangers, was daunting. But he also knew that he had faced fear before and had learned that courage often grew in small steps, in moments of doubt turned into action. Over the next few weeks, the boy worked even harder. He experimented with more difficult pieces, some that he had never dared to try before. His fingers became faster, his control over dynamics improved, and his ability to convey emotion through music deepened. Each session was both exhausting and exhilarating. He learned to embrace mistakes as part of the learning process, understanding that perfection was not the goal, but growth and expression were. Students continued to watch him with admiration. Some approached him to learn. Others simply listened in quiet awe. He had become more than a talented pianist. He had become a symbol of dedication and perseverance. The shy boy who had once been mocked or ignored had now become a source of inspiration. Teachers noticed the change as well. They began to encourage other students, showing them that with practice and courage, anyone could achieve remarkable things. The principal remained a steady guide. He provided feedback, encouragement, and sometimes gentle challenges to push the boy beyond his comfort zone. The boy learned to trust the principal's judgment, realizing that his strict demeanor was a form of support, not criticism. The lessons went beyond music. They taught discipline, resilience, and the importance of believing in oneself. Finally, the day came when the boy was invited to perform at a regional competition. The idea of traveling, performing in front of strangers, and facing unknown judges filled him with nervous energy. He remembered the first showcase, the principal's initial doubt, and the whispers of his classmates. He knew he had grown, but doubts still lingered. On the day of the competition, the auditorium was massive compared to the familiar school stage. Bright lights, unfamiliar faces, and the hum of anticipation surrounded him. Yet, as he sat at the piano and placed his fingers on the keys, he felt a quiet calm. He had prepared, practiced, and faced fear before. This was just another step, another chance to express himself and his music. The first notes sounded, soft and steady, filling the auditorium with warmth. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the clarity and emotion in the music. The boy's fingers danced across the keys, bringing life to every note. He felt the music in his bones, letting it guide him as he had always done. Each chord, each melody, was a story, a reflection of his journey, his courage, and his growth. As the performance continued, the audience was swept away. Judges and spectators alike were silent, listening intently, feeling the emotions the boy conveyed. He had learned not just to play notes, but to tell a story through music, to communicate feelings that words could not express. The stage, once intimidating, now felt like a place of freedom, a space where his passion could flow unhindered. When the final note lingered and faded, there was a brief silence, as if the room itself were in awe. Then, applause erupted, filling the auditorium with sound and energy. The boy rose from the bench, slightly trembling, but proud. He had done it. He had faced a bigger challenge than ever before and had conquered it through talent, practice, and courage. The principal's words echoed in his mind. Courage and dedication could unlock potential, and true talent shines brightest when it is nurtured and shared. The boy realized that he had grown far beyond the shy, quiet student who once walked unnoticed through the school corridors. He had become someone who inspired, someone who faced fear and transformed it into strength. In the weeks and months that followed, the boy continued to perform in various settings. Each performance brought new challenges, but also new confidence. He learned that the applause and recognition were gratifying, but the true reward lay in the journey, in the practice, and in the courage to keep going despite fear. The principal watched proudly from a distance, seeing how the boy's talent and determination had blossomed. What had started as a moment of doubt and testing had become a story of growth, courage, and inspiration. The boy had not only surprised the principal and his classmates, but he had also discovered his own strength and potential. By the end of the year, the boy had become a symbol of what quiet determination, hard work, and courage could achieve. He had learned to face challenges, embrace opportunities, and express himself fully through his music. Students and teachers alike respected him, not just for his skill, but for his humility and dedication. And the principal, who had once intended to test him, now saw him as a testament to the power of talent nurtured with patience and guidance. The boy understood that his journey was far from over. There would be more performances, more challenges, and moments of fear. But he also knew that he had the strength, skill, and courage to face them. Each note he played was a reminder of his journey, his growth, and the limitless possibilities that lay ahead. His music, once a private escape, had become a bridge to others, a voice of courage and inspiration that would continue to touch lives for years to come.